Okay, so I hope you are enjoying our look at Photoshop's correction tools here. What else can we do to our images inside Photoshop? Well, there's a tool that I want to show you called the Color Replacement tool. So what I've done is I've opened up an image called trucks.psd. This, of course, is found inside your Chapter 7 folder, which is inside your Project Files folder, which should be sitting on your desktop. Go ahead and open them up. And the Color Replacement tool is found underneath the Brush tool. So go ahead and find them there underneath your Brush tool. Grab them there. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a color that I want to use to replace the colors inside this photo. So I'll single click on my foreground color swatch. That brings me into Photoshop's color picker. And I'm going to go and choose a purple here on this color ramp, maybe a slightly darker purple. Click on OK. Now you're going to find this tool really easy to work with. All I do, I bring my brush over top of the area that I want to recolor. Maybe it's a person's shirt. Maybe it's some sort of an object. In this case, it's a red pickup truck. And I'm just going to click and drag with this tool. And you can see that what's happening is it's picking up on the red inside the pickup truck. And it's replacing it with the color that I had chosen as my foreground color. So I'll just kind of make my way around the object here. All I have to do is make sure that that little plus, that little cross inside the brush stays inside the object before I start clicking and dragging. And that's really all there is to it. Sometimes I find these smaller, tighter areas, if I just single click with the tool, that seems to do a decent job. Along the bumper there, looking pretty good. All right, good stuff. I'm going to go and grab another color here. Maybe I'll go with an orange. And I'm going to go after our blue truck. Same story here. Of course, at any time, I can increase or decrease the brush size as I go. Whatever I prefer to do here. All the way around the truck. You get the idea. That is how this tool works. I could finish off the truck here, but I will leave that up to you. Again, single clicking here seems to help in these smaller areas. Now, what about my options up on the toolbar? Well, I have my brush drop down. We've seen this a whole bunch of times. They've kind of changed the brush drop down for no real good reason. I suppose if I wanted to create some sort of special effect brush that's more like a calligraphy brush, I could adjust my spacing here. But really the important stuff here is the diameter and the hardness. So there's that guy there. I have my mode drop down if I want there. I would suggest leaving that guy on color. And then I have a couple of settings here that I want to discuss for a second. I have sampling continuous, I have sampling once, and I have sampling background color swatch. So what sampling continuous does is as I'm dragging inside this image here, it's going to continually sample the color that I'm replacing inside this brush. And that's determined by the tolerance setting way over on the right-hand side of the options bar here. The tolerance setting here works very similar to the tolerance setting for the Magic Wand tool, which we saw in a much earlier chapter. Sample once means select the color that you click on with the mouse, and using the background color, what that would mean is it would only replace the color if it matches the background color swatch down in the bottom of the toolbox. So that's how that works. And then I have some limits options here. Discontiguous, contiguous, and find edges. So discontiguous, it skips over pixels, non-adjacent pixels. Contiguous, which is the default, and I would suggest leaving it on the default, only replaces pixels that are adjacent to each other inside the brush as I'm dragging around. And of course, find edges is going to look for edges inside your image, and it's going to stay inside them. Probably leaving the defaults will be just fine for you here. Now, this is one way to replace color inside your images. I'm going to show you a different way to go about replacing color inside your photos. So, once again, F12 here to take us all the way back to where we started. I'm going to head up to my image menu, down to adjustments, and then all the way down to replace color. This is one of my favorite commands here inside Photoshop. I'll just pull him over to the side here. All right, how this guy's going to work is I'm going to click on the color inside the image that I want to replace. For example, the red truck here. I'll click on the red. You can see there's a little thumbnail here for my image. So what I can do is I can use this fuzziness slider. That increases, remember that tolerance that we were just talking about a second ago? If I crank this way up, it's going to find more pixels inside the image to affect. If I drop the fuzziness slider way down, it's only going to affect a few pixels inside the image. So what I'm trying to do is use the little white object I see inside my thumbnail here, and I'm using that as a guide. Let's say I wind up around here. Okay, now down in the bottom area of the dialog box, I can use my hue slider. The hue is the color. You can see as I drag this guy around, check out what's happening to the truck back in my image. So let's say I'm going to go for a green somewhere, let's say about here. Now, the saturation slider, what saturation is the amount of color. If I drag this guy to the right, I'm going to crank up the intensity of the color. If I drop it way down, I'm going to be reducing the intensity of the color. So let's say I'll wind up about there. And the lightness slider, how I think of the lightness slider is if I drag it to the right, I add white. If I drag it to the left, I add black. So the lightness slider I may fiddle with a little bit, but really for me it's really more about the saturation and the hue slider. So let's say I wind up around here somewhere. You can see, though, inside my image, it's really not doing a good job. So what I can do is I can hold down my Shift key. Remember our chapter on selections? We know that holding down the Shift key adds to selections. So I can click on other pixels inside the image window and have them affected as well. So they're getting added to my little thumbnail here back in the image. Now what's happening though is I'm affecting all of the pixels inside my image. Look at the side of the Hummers getting affected there as well. The truck itself looks good, but I don't want to impact the rest of the image. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel out of this guy. I'm going to go and grab my Polygonal Lasso tool and zoom in just a little bit on my image. And rather than affecting all the pixels inside my image, I'm going to select the pixels or select the area that I want to impact. So I'll just kind of quickly draw a selection around this red truck here. And this is going to isolate the pixels away from the rest of the image. I guess what I'm saying here is if I want to use my replace color command, but I want to make sure that I don't mess up the rest of my image, I can use a selection. And you can use whatever selection tools you want. You can use your freehand lasso tool if you want, your shape selection tools, the magic wand, the quick selection tool, whatever you like. Okay, there's my selection. I'll back off just a little bit here. I'm going to hit Command H here on the Mac or Control H on the Windows side to hide the marching ants. I'll go back to Image, Adjustments, and down to Replace Color. Now notice what's happened to the thumbnail inside this dialog box. It's only including the area that I selected. So back down to my hue slider here. My saturation. I better crank this fuzziness way up here. There, something like that. I'm going to hold down my Shift key, add in a little bit more. Check that out. I am not affecting the other pixels inside my image at all. That does a much better job. The other thing I want to do, though, is I want to try and make this look as natural as possible. So that's where the lightness and saturation sliders come in. I want to try and blend this truck in so it looks like it belongs with the other two trucks, something like that. That looks fantastic. I'll just hit Command D or Control D on the Windows side to deselect. And there's a look at using the Replace Color command inside Photoshop.